live a little early for the Liberal Dan Radio live stream of the vice presidential debate. The only vice presidential debate, but the second debate of the presidential election for 2020. This obviously, of course, between current Vice President Mike Pence and Kamala Harris, the nominee for Vice President for the Democratic Party. So we are just waiting for the people to come. I'm sorry, as Trump would say, the people to come on stage and start the debate and see if this can be a smaller or less of an embarrassment than what was previously done last week, because that was a fustercluck, to say the least, when it comes to just decorum. I think it was reported that, what was it, 130 or 150 times that Donald Trump interrupted Joe Biden and the moderator because he is a petulant child and does not have the what's the word I'm looking for, the temperament, so to speak, to be vice president, if you will. So I fully expect, I expect Mike Pence to be better behaved than Trump. I don't know if that's going to be correct or not. And, you know, if he does, I don't know. I don't know what we should expect out of Pence tonight. I mean, I think the last year's debate was kind of meh. Not last year's, last election's debate was just kind of meh. You know, between Kane and Pence. I think Kamala Harris is going to do a much better job, I guess, dealing with both. I think Kamala Harris will do a better job than Tim Kaine did. And I don't know. I don't know what we should expect when it comes to all of that malarkey, so to speak. No malarkey. I love this shirt. I had to have it. Had to have it. And it does look like we have people that are better masked, more masked. Obviously, they were the Presidential Commission, or the Commission on Presidential Debates, or whatever the hell it's called. I am sure they were not going to put up with any more malarkey when it comes to mask wearing in the audience. Of course, the audience seems to be much smaller than it was previously. I think, are we going over who's in the, or we're just getting shots of people? I believe that's Pence's, I think that's Mrs. Pence, mother, if you will. One of the things that I just don't get about Mike Pence is the whole thing that, you know, he can't be alone in a one room by himself with another woman. Like, do you not have self-control? It seems rather childish. And that's the one thing about Pence that seems to be just interesting about him, is that, you know, while Trump clearly is the more childish of the two, Pence is at least childish in that respect. One would think, let's say, are they going to go over rules or something?
In the United States, Hamilton has nothing on the Commission on Presidential Debates when it comes to exclusive tickets. I want to offer a special welcome to Vice President Pence's family, I think is there, and to Senator Kamala Harris's family on this side, and most especially to my bosses, who are seated right up there, and I'm very glad that they came and joined us. My bosses from USA Today and from Gannett. We're glad that you're here, but this debate is not about you, and it's not about me. It's about the millions of Americans who are going to be watching it. And that's why I'm going to ask you.
The millions watching around the world.
Ask you for your silence.
Let's get ready to rumble.
I'm going to ask you during the debate not to cheer or to boo, or to hiss or to laugh, because that is distracting for the people we are really staging this debate.
I would think that I might be able to have good decorum if I was a guest of a debate.
That will be when I announce the two candidates on the stage. They'll come on the
I
stage
would like to think so.
simultaneously. That'll be a time to applaud.
But there
and
may
then
very
applaud
well be
again
some
at the very
things
end
that
of the
I
debate.
would just not
But
be
if you
able to.
could-
Of course,
if you could keep
good decorum in a
restrain your
debate often should
enthusiasm
depend on the
between those two
panelists,
candidates,
or
I'd
the
appreciate it.
panelists, but
And if you could
the
send me
people
a little bit of
debating
karma,
should be
that would also be appreciated, but quietly.
well
I'm going
behaved.
now to
And I'm
sit down
hoping,
and get settled.
for the sake of the
and turn my
country,
back to you,
that this
but
will be
not
an
in a rude
example
way.
of a better
And I'll
behaved
see
debate.
you
Now,
on the other
whether or
side.
not we have a
Thank you
debate
again for being here.
next week, and with the town hall type format, I guess will depend on whether or not Trump actually tests negative for COVID-19 or not. So, we still got 6 minutes and 20 seconds till the start of the vice presidential debate. So, well, there's a lot of people who were. Let me pull back to the live screen. I did turn off. Welcome, all the people that are currently viewing. If you haven't subscribed to Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube, please do so. Your subscription helps me get that much closer to being able to get my videos monetized and being able to do more with the podcast than just the podcast. I could start producing better content, and as such, start making this more of a thing. It's just unfortunately YouTube, in my opinion, they threw the baby out with the bathwater. They're to go into that a little bit, I guess, before the debate starts. What happened is that I have kids screaming in the background, and they're being horrifically loud. I don't know if you can hear the kids on there. Hopefully you can. I think this mic does a pretty good job of getting rid of outside noise. But, I don't know. Maybe you're hearing them. Maybe you're not. I don't know. Currently, I'm dropping frames, so I don't know what that's about. Anyway, what YouTube did was there were people who were downloading other people's content on YouTube, like popular gaming channels, for example. Like there's one that my kids watch all the time, FGTV. Maybe there's EvanTube, another one that they watch all the time. And they would download their content. They would then create a channel that had a similar sounding or looking name, like, FGTV2 or something, or they make it look exactly like the original channel, but it wouldn't be their channel. And as soon as people would start getting hits on those videos because, oh, here's an FGTV video, there is, and other people would be making money off of their content. And I guess YouTube took the lazy way out in saying, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we're going to force you to have 1,000 subscribers in order for you to make money on YouTube. Now, I wasn't making a lot of money on YouTube before. It was more of a hobby at the time. And, I think I made $100 off of one video that managed to get a decent amount of impressions very quickly. But, I don't know. It's to me, it's harmful to the platform. I'm sure they don't think so. It's harmful to the platform in that it makes it so that the middle ground users, the ones who might not be trying to make millions off of YouTube, but who might make, maybe a couple thousand a year, maybe those people are no longer making any money because they couldn't come up with a better way of policing that sort of thing. And there's other things, like joked around about, hearing copyrighted content during my live streams of the Democratic and the Republican debates. And there was, during the John McCain hearing, or not hearing, but the video, I did get a copyright hit because they were playing Beatles music, and the Beatles, people that own the Beatles copyright are basically like, nope, nobody's allowed to play our music without our consent. So boom, nuked. The other music videos that would take place, that would play, or the music that played during the video, those artists didn't seem to have a problem with their music being played. They just were like, hey, we're gonna get the monetization of this video, not you. I think that's what happens a lot of the time with there are reaction videos where people watch the reactions of, like, I'm gonna watch this song or this artist for the first time, and I've always wondered how they got away with it, because before, you get the slightest bit of a copyright and it gets nuked. On my Nerdy Dan channel, I had a video that got flagged immediately after posting it. It got flagged so quickly that if you look at the time that it was approved and posted to YouTube, and you look at the time that I got the email stating that you have a copyright violation, the time it took between me posting the video and me getting the warning was less time than the start of the video to the point of the video that generated the copyright complaint. So obviously you have robotics things that are constantly, I guess, scrubbing YouTube, trying to find copyrighted content. And to me, and it's a bad faith. There's bad faith that goes on with it, because these people make copyright complaints against these YouTube creators and aren't required to back up why they believe it's a copyright complaint, why they believe it's a valid copyright complaint. Because, for example, a lot of times what I was doing on that other channel was I was, criticizing or critiquing a particular bit of the video, which is allowed under fair use. So, but they didn't care, and I said, look, I rebuff it, I refute their claims because I'm doing fair use, and they're like, nope, sorry, can't do it. We're not going to let you. So, as Trump says, it is what it is. Of course, I was having a good old time, and I'll talk about this more on the podcast after the live stream. But I was having a good old time on, are we starting? Good old time.
Good evening.
Telling people
it
is what it is, whatever. If people would say, well, Donald Trump, don't mock if Donald Trump dies. I'm like, well, it is what it is. How dare you say that?
Sponsored by the
what? How dare me use the words of Donald Trump in response to the deaths that took place in COVID-19?
To moderate this debate.
I'm such a terrible person.
An important part of our democracy.
So let's let the introduction happen,
in Kingsbury
and we'll
Hall tonight,
make our
we have
comments in response.
And socially distant audience,
and
we've
make our
taken
comments in
extra
response
precautions
as
during
warranted,
this pandemic.
as called
Among
for.
other things, everyone in the audience is required to wear a face mask, and the candidates will be seated 12 feet apart. The audience is enthusiastic about
Pence
their candidates,
mocked
but they've agreed to express that enthusiasm
the
only
panel
twice
between them.
at the
I
end
mean,
of the
it's
debate.
ridiculous
And now,
that
when I
Trump
introduce
mocked
the
the
Please
panel.
welcome California
Pence
Senator
mocked
Kamala
the
Harris
panel.
and Vice President
He's the
Mike
head of the
Pence.
freaking COVID response team, and he mocked the panel.
Thank you.
He's probably teeming with COVID right now. They say that he tested negative, but you can test negative and then test
Senator
positive
Harris
days
and
later.
Vice President Pence, thank you for being here. We're meeting as President Trump and the First Lady continue to undergo treatment in Washington after testing positive for COVID-19. We send our thoughts and prayers to them for their rapid and complete
Thoughts and
recovery
prayers.
and for
That's
the
very
recovery
useful.
of everyone afflicted by the coronavirus. The two campaigns and the Commission on Presidential Debates have agreed to the ground rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them on behalf of the millions of Americans who are watching. One note, no one in either campaign or at the Commission or anywhere else has been told in advance what topics I'll raise or what questions I'll ask.
Ooh, off the cuff. I like it.
This 90-minute debate will be divided into 9 segments of about 10 minutes each. I'll begin a segment by posing a question to each of you, sometimes the same question, sometimes a different question on the same topic. You will then have 2 minutes to answer without interruption
All right,
by me
Mama,
or
let's
the other
go.
candidate. Then we'll take 6 minutes or so to discuss the issue. At that point, although there will always be more to say, we'll move on to the next topic. We want a debate that is lively, but Americans also deserve a a discussion that is
Poor
civil.
Mike Pence has to be on a
These
stage
are
with two women,
tumultuous
not just
times,
one. I
but
guess
we
he has
can
his
and will
wife
have
in
a
the audience.
respectful
That's okay.
exchange
It's kosher.
about the big issues
so to speak.
facing our nation. Let's begin with the ongoing pandemic that has cost our country so much. Senator Harris, the coronavirus is not under control. Over the past week, Johns Hopkins reports that 39 states have had more COVID cases over the past 7 days than in the week before. 9 states have set new records.
Florida.
Even if a vaccine is released soon, the next administration will face hard choices. What would a Biden administration do in January and February that a Trump administration wouldn't do? Would you
Listen to the
impose
scientists.
new lockdowns for businesses and schools and hotspots? A federal mandate to wear masks? You have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Thank you, Susan. Well, the American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. And here are the facts. 210,000 dead people in our country in just
Yep.
the last several months. Over 7 million people who have contracted this disease.
Yep.
1 in 5 businesses closed. We're looking at frontline workers who have been treated like sacrificial workers. We are looking at over 30 million people who in the last several months had to file for unemployment. And here's the thing. On January 28th, the Vice President and the President were informed about the nature of this pandemic. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will
Okay,
affect
but you
young
need to get
people,
to your point.
and that it would be contracted because it is airborne.
What would make it different? That's what you need to do.
And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you. Can you imagine if you knew on January 28th, as opposed to March 13th, what they knew, what you might have done to prepare?
Yep.
They knew and they covered it up. The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness
president
of it.
said that the Democratic
president said,
response was a
you're on one
hoax,
side of his ledger
which
if you
is,
wear a mask,
to
you're
be
on the other
more
side of his
accurate,
ledger
it's
if you
nitpicky,
don't.
But
And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all. That is the plan that Joe Biden has and that I have, knowing that we have to get a hold of what has been going on, and we need to save our country. And Joe
Biden
Biden
has
is the
said
best
that he
leader to
would
do
make
that, and frankly, this
all federal
administration has
facilities require
forfeited
masks.
Thank you,
their
Senator
right to
Harris.
reelection based on this.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, more than 210,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 since February. The U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population is higher than that of almost every other wealthy nation on earth.
5 other
For instance, our
nations
death
are
rate
worse.
is 2.5 times that of Canada next door. You head the administration's coronavirus task force. Why is the U.S. death toll as a percentage of our population higher than that of almost every other wealthy
And I'll
country?
say it's
And you have 2 minutes to respond without interruption.
Susan, thank you. And I want to thank the Commission and the University of Utah for hosting this event. And
I
Senator
don't
Harris,
like that
it's a
question
privilege to be on the stage with you.
because
And our nation has gone through a
deaths per
very
population
challenging
is not
time
how you
this
measure the
year.
fatality of the disease.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
See, this is why I
Before there
couldn't
were
be
more
present
than
because I'd have
5
to laugh.
cases in the United States, all people who had returned from China. President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. Now, Senator Joe Biden opposed that decision. He said it was xenophobic and
It's
hysterical.
because he's a xenophobe and we had
And I
to
can tell
assume
you,
that it
having
was
led the White
xenophobic.
House Coronavirus Task Force, that decision alone by President Trump bought us invaluable time to stand up the greatest national mobilization since World War II. And I believe it saved hundreds of thousands of American lives. Because with that time, we were able to reinvent testing. More than 115 million tests have been done to date. We were able to see to the delivery of billions of supplies so our doctors and nurses had the resources support they needed. And we began, really, before the month of February was out, to develop a vaccine and to develop medicines and therapeutics that have been saving lives all along the way. And under President Trump's leadership, Operation Warp Speed, we believe we'll have literally tens of millions of doses of vaccine before the end of this year.
False.
The reality is, when you look
Nobody
at the
believes
Biden
that.
plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way.
Except
And quite
no,
frankly,
contact tracing isn't.
When I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. And I think the American people know that this is a president who has put the
Thank you,
health
Vice
of America first, and the American people, I believe with my heart, can be
Thank you,
proud
Vice
of the
President Pence.
sacrifices they have made.
The sacrifices they made.
Lives.
Senator Harris, would you
Oh.
like to respond?
Absolutely. Whatever the vice president is claiming the administration has done, clearly it hasn't worked. When you're looking at over 210,000 dead bodies in our country, American lives that have been lost, families that are grieving that
Sacrifices.
loss.
So those are sacrifices.
And you know, the
That's
vice
a campaign
president is the
talking
head of
point
the
that we
task
needed.
force and knew on January 28th how serious this was. And then thanks to Bob Woodward, we learned that they knew about it. And then when that was exposed, the vice president said, when asked, well, why didn't y'all tell anybody? He said, because the president wanted people to remain calm.
Well, let's get
So I,
Bob-
no, but Susan, this is
Real
important. And I
leadership.
want to add,
Weigh
but
in
if,
here.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
weigh in.
speaking.
Yeah, you
So
can have
I
15 more
wanna-
seconds, and then we'll give the vice president
Thank
a
you.
chance to
So I
respond.
want to ask the American people, how calm were you when you were panicked about where you're going to get your next roll of toilet paper? How calm were you when your kids were sent home from school and you didn't know when they could go back? How calm
Thank
were
you.
you
Thank
when
you,
your
Senator
children
Harris.
couldn't see your parents because you were afraid they could kill them?
Right.
Let's give Vice President Pence a chance to respond. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute to
You
respond.
know, there's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one.
You haven't
And I
done
want all
anything
of you to
about
know
it.
that you'll always be in our hearts
Yeah.
and in our prayers. But when you say what the American people have done over these last 8 months hasn't worked, that's a great disservice to the
It's not
sacrifices
what the American people haven't
made.
done. It's what the
I'm referring to
The
you,
reality, if
President.
I may finish that.
Kamala, don't interrupt.
The reality is,
Don't
Dr.
be like
Fauci
Trump.
said, everything that he told the president in the Oval Office, the president told the American people. Now, President Trump, I will tell you, has boundless confidence in the American people, and he always spoke with confidence that we'd get through this together. But when you say it hasn't worked, when Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx and our medical experts came to us in the second week of March, they said if the president didn't take the unprecedented step of shutting down roughly half of the American economy, that we could lose 2.2 million Americans. Now, that's the reality.
Thank you.
They also
Thank you,
said
Vice
to us, if
President
we did
Pence.
everything right, Susan, we could still lose more than 200,000 Americans.
Vice
Now,
President
one
Pence.
life lost is too
Thank you.
many, Susan. But the American people, I believe, deserve credit for the sacrifices.
She didn't
that
say
they
the
have
American
made
people
for
failed.
the
She
health
said
of their
you
family
failed.
And their neighbors first, our
Such a
doctors, our
liar.
nurses, our first
Thank you, Vice
responders.
President Pence.
And I'm going to speak up on behalf of what the American people have done.
Vice President Pence, you were in the front row in a Rose Garden event 11 days ago at what seems to have been a super spreader event for senior
Yep.
administration and congressional officials. No social distancing,
No mask.
few masks, and now a cluster of coronavirus cases among those who were there. How can you expect Americans to follow the administration's safety guidelines to protect themselves from COVID
Do as I say,
when you
not
at the
as I
White
do.
House have not been doing so?
Well, the American people have demonstrated over the last 8 months that when given the facts, they're willing to put the health of their families and their neighbors and people they don't even know
No,
first.
they're not. Half of the
President
company,
Trump and I have
country
great
is
confidence
fighting
in the American
masks.
people and their ability to take that information and put it into practice. In the height of the epidemic, when we were losing a heartbreaking number of 2,500 Americans a day, we surged resources to New Jersey and New York and New Orleans and Detroit. We told the American people what needed to be done, and the American people made the sacrifices. When the outbreak in the Sun Belt happened this summer, again, Americans stepped forward. But the reality is the work of the President of the United
Sturgis.
States goes on. A vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States has come upon us, and the President introduced Judge Amy Coney
Yes,
Barrett.
thank you. Thank you, Vice
But
President
at
Pence.
that, if I may say, that Rose Garden event, there's been a great deal of speculation about it. My wife Karen and I were there and honored to be there. Many of the people who were at that event, Susan, actually were tested
Yes.
for coronavirus. And it was an outdoor event, which all of our scientists regularly.
But you still were not
routinely
socially
advise.
distanced, and most people
The
didn't wear
difference
masks.
here is President Trump and I trust the American people to make choices in the best interest
They
of
should have a chess
their
clock.
health. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris consistently talk about mandates, and not just mandates with the coronavirus, but a government takeover of health care.
Thank you. Thank you,
The
Vice
Green New
President Pence.
Deal, all government control. We're about freedom and respecting the freedom of the American people.
Let's talk about respecting the American people. You respect the American people when you tell them the truth.
Yes.
You respect the American people when you have the courage
Which we've
to be a
always
leader,
done. Nope.
speaking of those things that you may not want people to hear,
Yeah,
but
you
they
interrupted
need to
her
hear so
too,
they
so
can
there you
protect
go.
themselves. But this administration stood on information that if you had as a parent, if you had as a worker, knowing you didn't have enough money saved up, and now you're standing in a food line because of the ineptitude of an administration that was unwilling to speak the truth to the American people.
Amen.
So let's talk about caring about the American people. The American people have had to sacrifice far too much because of the incompetence of this administration. It is asking too much of the people.
Susan, we talked
No,
about
Vice
It is
President
asking
Pence.
too much of the people.
Let-
That they
Pence
would not be
interrupting
equipped with
twice,
the
at least
information
3
they
times.
need to
Kamala
help
once.
themselves to protect
Susan,
their
the
parents
President-
and
No,
their
I'm sorry.
children.
Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, I'm sorry.
It's
I meant
fine,
to
I'm
say-
Kamala.
No, you're Senator Harris to me. For life to get back to normal, Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts say that most of the people who can be vaccinated need to be vaccinated. But half of Americans now say they wouldn't take a vaccine if it was released now. If the Trump administration approves a vaccine before or after the election, should Americans take it, and would you take it?
If the public health professionals, if Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it, absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Vice President Pence, there have been a lot of repercussions from this pandemic. In recent days, the president's diagnosis of COVID-19 has underscored the importance of the job that you hold and that you are seeking. That's our second topic tonight. It's the role of the vice president. One of you will make history on January 20th. You will be the vice president to the oldest president the United States has ever had. Donald Trump will be 74 years old on Inauguration Day. Joe Biden will be 78 years old. That already has raised concerns among some voters, concerns that have been sharpened by President Trump's hospitalization in recent days. Vice President Pence, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with President Trump about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes without interruption.
Well, Susan, thank you, although I would like to go back.
I think we need to move on
well,
to the
thank
issue
you,
of
but I would like to
vice
go back
presidency.
He's not following the
because
rules.
the reality is that we're going to have a vaccine, Senator, in record time, in unheard of time, in less than a year.
The Obama
We have 5
administration
companies in
had one,
phase 3
the
clinical trials.
H1N1 in 6
And we're
months.
right now producing tens of millions of doses. So the fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the
She did
vaccine
not do that. She
emerges
clearly
during the
said that
Trump
Fauci and the
administration, I
experts said
think
to do it.
is unconscionable. And Senator, I just ask you, stop playing politics with people's lives. The reality is that we will have a vaccine, we believe, before the end of this year. And it will have the capacity to save countless American lives. And your continuous undermining of confidence in a
He's not.
vaccine
She's
is just,
not.
it's just unacceptable. And let me also say, you know, the reality is when you talk about failure in this administration, we actually do know what failure looks like in a pandemic. It was 2009. The swine flu arrived in the United States.
6 months.
Thankfully, it ended up not being as lethal as the coronavirus. But before the end of the year, when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, not 7.5 million people contracted the swine flu. 60 million Americans.
12,000 died.
Flu.
It wasn't as
If
deadly.
the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus, in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we
Thank you,
still
Vice
learned
President
from it.
Pence.
And I think
Vice
the
President
American
Pence, your time
people,
is
I'm going
up.
to say again, can be
Vice
proud
President Pence, I'm sorry,
of
your
what
time
we
is
have
up.
done. And Senator, please
Thank you, Vice
stop
President
undermining
Pence.
confidence in a vaccine.
She's not.
Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked
Sure.
Vice President Pence, which is, have you had a conversation or reached an agreement with Vice President Biden about safeguards or procedures when it comes to the issue of presidential disability? And if not, and if you win the election next month, do you think you should? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So let me tell you, first of all, the day I got the call from Joe Biden, it was actually a Zoom call, asking me to serve with him on this ticket was probably one of the most memorable days of my life. I thought about my mother, who came to the United States at the age of 19, gave birth to me at the age of 25 at Kaiser Hospital in Oakland, California. And the thought that I'd be sitting here right now, I know would make her proud. And she must be looking down on this. Joe and I were raised in a very similar way. We were raised with values that are about hard work, about the value and the dignity of public service, and about the importance of fighting for the dignity of all people. And I think Joe asked me to serve with him because, I have a career that included being elected the first woman district attorney of San Francisco, where I created models of innovation for law enforcement in terms of reform of the criminal justice system. I was elected the first woman of color and black woman to be elected Attorney General of the state of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second
I
only
have
to the
my
United
issues
States
with Harris
Department
and
of
her
Justice.
history in California.
From
Let's
there,
put
I
it at
took
that.
on everything
If you
from
listen to a previous
transnational criminal
podcast of mine,
organizations
you'll know
to the
what
big
those
banks that
issues
were taking
are.
advantage of homeowners, to for-profit
leave it at
colleges
that.
that were taking advantage of veterans. And then, of course, now I serve in the United States Senate as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I've been in regular receipt of classified information about threats to our nation and hotspots around the world. I've traveled the world. I've met with our soldiers in war zones. And I think Joe has asked me to serve with him because he knows that we share a purpose, which is about lifting up
But
the
would you have
American
that
people.
conversation with him
And after
about
the 4
the
years that we
25th
have seen of
Amendment?
Donald Trump unifying our country around our common values and principles.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Neither President Trump nor Vice President Biden has released a sort of detailed health information that had become the modern norm until the 2016 election. And in recent days, President Trump's doctors have given misleading answers or refused to answer basic questions about his health. And my question to each of you in turn is this information voters deserve to know? Vice President Pence, would you like to
I
go
think
first?
voters should get general
Well,
information,
Susan,
not
thank you.
specific.
And let me say, on behalf of the President and the First Lady, how moved we've all been by the outpouring of prayers and concern for the President. And I do
Well,
believe it's
some people don't
emblematic
want
of the
President
prayers
Pence.
and the concern that have ushered forth for every American impacted
Not sure what's worse.
by the coronavirus.
I mean, but if it
But
happens,
the care
it
the
is what it
President
is.
received at Walter Reed Hospital, the White House doctors, was exceptional. And the transparency that they practiced all along the way
And
will
everybody
continue.
should be able to get that.
The American people
care.
have a right to know about the health and well-being of their president, and will continue to do that. But I'm just extremely grateful and was more than a little moved by the broad and bipartisan support. And Senator, I want to thank you and Joe Biden for your expressions of genuine concern. And I also want to congratulate you, as I did on that phone call, on the historic nature of your nomination.
Thank you.
I never expected to be on this stage 4 years ago, so I know the feeling. But the reality is we've got an election before the American people in the midst of this challenging year. And the stakes have never been higher, but I think the choice has never been clearer.
I want to give Senator Harris a chance to respond to the same question I asked, which is, do voters have a right to know more detailed health information about presidential candidates, and especially about presidents,
Some of the general.
especially when they're facing some kind of challenge?
Absolutely, and that's why Joe Biden has been so incredibly transparent, and certainly by contrast, the president has not, both in terms of health records, but also let's look at taxes. We now know, because of great investigative journalism, that Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes. When I first heard about it, I literally said, "You mean $750,000?" And it was like, no, $750. We now know Donald Trump owes and is in debt for $400 million. And just so everyone is clear, when we say in debt, it means you owe money to somebody. And it'd be really good to know who the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief,
Amen.
owes money to, because the
Russian
American people have a
oligarchs.
right to know what is influencing the President's decisions. And is he making those decisions on the best interest of the American people, of you, or self-interest? So, Susan, I'm glad you asked about transparency, because it has to be across the board. Joe has been incredibly transparent over many, many years. The one thing we all know about Joe, he puts it all out there. He is honest, he is forthright. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been about covering up everything.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I want to give you a chance to respond, Vice President.
Well, look, I respect the fact that Joe Biden spent 47 years in public life. I respect your public service as well.
Thank you.
The American people have a president who's a businessman. He's a job creator.
Failed businessman
He's
many
paid
times over.
Tens of millions of dollars in taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. He's
We're
created
talking about
tens of
income
thousands of
taxes. We're not talking about
American
payroll
jobs.
tax.
And the president said those public reports.
Payroll taxes are
not
paid because
accurate.
other people work.
And the president's also released literally stacks of financial disclosures the American people can review just as the law allows. But the distinction here is that Joe Biden, 47 years in public service, compared to President Donald Trump, who brought all of that experience 4 years ago.
Thank you, Vice
And
President.
turned this economy around by cutting taxes,
What
rolling back
experience?
regulations,
Declaring
Thank you, Vice
bankruptcy, running up
President.
debt.
fighting for free and
He's
fair
run up just as
trade.
much debt.
All of
Thank
that's
you,
on
Vice
the line
President
if
Pence.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, that's a
Or the
good
White.
segue into our third topic,
Segue.
which is about the economy. This has been another aspect of life for Americans that's been so affected by this coronavirus. We have a jobs crisis brewing. On Friday, we learned that the unemployment rate had declined to 7.9% in September, but the job growth had stalled, and that was before the latest round of layoffs and furloughs in the airline industry at Disney and elsewhere. Hundreds of thousands of discouraged workers have stopped looking for work. Nearly 11 million jobs that existed at the beginning of the year haven't been replaced. Those hardest hit include Latinos, blacks, and women.
Can we not say
Harris,
blacks?
the
It's
Biden-Harris
2020.
campaign
Black
has
is an
proposed new
adjective,
programs to
not
boost
a
the economy,
noun.
and you would pay for that new spending
Just
by
saying.
raising $4 trillion in taxes on wealthy individuals and corporations. Some economists warn that could curb entrepreneurial ventures that fuel growth and create jobs. Would raising taxes put the recovery at risk? And you have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
Thank you. On the issue of the economy, I think there couldn't be a more fundamental difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden believes you measure the health and the strength of America's economy based on the health and the strength of the American worker and the American family. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who measures the strength of the economy based on how rich people are doing,
Right.
which is why he passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America, leading to a $2 trillion deficit that the American people are going to have to pay for. On day one, Joe Biden will repeal that tax bill. He'll get rid of it. And what he'll do with the money is invest it in the American people. And through a plan that
given
is
a
about
chance, the
investing in
American people can
infrastructure,
accomplish
something that
anything.
Donald Trump said he would do. I remember hearing about some infrastructure week. I don't think it ever happened. But Joe Biden will do that. He'll invest in infrastructure. It's about upgrading our roads and bridges, but also investing in clean energy and renewable energy. Joe is going to invest that money in what we need to do around innovation. There was a time when our country believed in science and invested in research and development so that we were an innovation leader on the globe. Joe Biden will use that money to invest in education. So, for example, for folks who want to go to a 2-year community college, it will be free. If you come from a family that makes less than $125,000, you'll go to a public university for free. And across the board, we'll make sure that if you have student loan debt, it's cut by $10,000. That's how Joe
I mean,
Biden thinks
some of us,
about
that's
the
not gonna
economy,
help
which is
much,
it's about
whether they give it
investing
to
in the
somebody
people
else
of our country, as
to-
opposed to passing a
'cause
tax
that's
bill,
just a
which had the benefit of
nothing.
letting American corporations go offshore to do their business.
Thank you,
You're
Senator
welcome.
Harris. Vice President Pence, your administration has been predicting a rapid and robust recovery, but the latest economic report suggests that's not happening. Should Americans be
dun.
braced for an economic comeback that is going to take not months, but a year or more? You have 2 minutes to answer uninterrupted.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Because when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax
Same
and spend and
regurgitated
regulate
line.
and bail our way back to a growing
Is it better to
economy.
tax and spend or to
President
not
Trump cut
tax and
taxes
spend?
across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of four had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred,
My taxes
most
did go
predominantly
down
for
under
blue-collar,
Donald Trump.
hardworking Americans,
My
the
happiness
average
in life
household
is
income
not
for a
simply
family of four
dictated by how
increased by
much in taxes I pay
$4,000
or how much
following
money I
President Trump's
have.
tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. It's really
For people
remarkable.
making
the fact that-
$400,000 a
I mean,
year or
right
more.
after a time where we're going through a pandemic that lost 22 million jobs at the height, we've already added back 11.6 million jobs because we had a president who cut taxes, rolled back regulation, unleashed American energy, fought for free and fair trade, and secured $4 trillion from the Congress of the United States to give direct payments to families, save 50 million jobs through the Paycheck Protection Program. We literally have spared
lots
no
of
expense to help the American people and the American
big
worker
businesses
through
like
this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to
Fogo,
raise taxes.
for
They want
example,
to bury our
abuse.
economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal, which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban
Joe
fracking,
Biden has
which will
not
cost
said
hundreds
banning
of thousands
fossil fuels.
of
He said
American
no
jobs
new
all
drilling
across
off
the
the
heartland.
Gulf.
And
in the
Joe
Gulf
Biden
and
wants
on
to
the
go back
American
to
old
economic
waters.
surrender to China. That when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone.
When Barack
And Joe
Obama
Biden
was
wants to
president,
repeal
we were a
all of the
net
tariffs
exporter of
that
gasoline.
President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth
Thank you,
and
sir.
opportunity,
Thank you,
4
Vice
more years of President Donald Trump. 2021
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
be the
President
biggest
Pence.
economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth of the fact is Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
You see?
a
He's gonna
year.
That's what I
repeal the Trump
said.
tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
There you go.
Well, wait,
I'm speaking.
be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That
And
was
his
tax
plan
cuts that gave
includes-
the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
That is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
is he
tax
only
bill-
cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden
She is
is
about
the one
to.
who, during the
go get
Great
the belt.
Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression. On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families
I
who
like how
otherwise
she's
were
like,
going
nope,
bankrupt
nope, don't talk
because
yet.
of hospital bills they could not
I'm
afford.
not finished.
On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of
Thank you, Senator
trying to
Harris.
get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but we need
important
to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition,
Which if you got
heart
COVID,
disease, diabetes, breast cancer,
COVID.
they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing
nonsense.
condition,
Thank
they're
you, Senator
coming
Harris.
for you. If you are
Nonsense.
under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage,
They're
they're
coming
coming
for
for
you.
you.
Senator Harris,
like
thank
that.
you.
They're coming
Let me
for
give you
you.
a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Geez. Well, neither are
You
you.
yourself said on
line.
multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking.
But she's not president. She's not running for
Biden
president. She's
looked
running
at
for vice
supporter in the
president.
eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway
America
right
growing
now
again?
will continue with
What?
4 more years of
Is that
President
another
Donald
acronym
Trump.
we
Thank
have
you
to know?
very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you.
Is climate change
This year,
real?
we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan.
It's God that does it
First,
because
I'm
we
very
have
proud of our
Sanders.
record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded. And our water is among the cleanest in the world.
That's not true.
And just a little while ago, the president
not
signed
true.
the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years. So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation and to the environment.
We
Now, with
talked
regard
about
to
this the
climate
last one.
change,
Carbon emissions have
the
in
climate
fact
is
gone
changing.
up under the Trump administration.
The issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden
Fossil
and
fuel
Kamala
combustion rose
Harris will put us
2.7%
back
in
in the
2018,
Paris Climate
second larger
Accord.
annual
They
increase.
imposed
There's
the
been a
Green
slight
New
drop
Deal,
since, but it's still
which would crush American energy,
higher
would
under
increase
Trump.
the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening
Greenhouse
precisely
gas emissions
because
are
we have a
higher than they were
strong
before
free
Trump took
market
office.
economy.
So he
You know,
this
what's
is a false
remarkable
statement
is
by Pence.
the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation. And we've done it
Except-
through natural gas.
It's not reduced under
fracking,
Trump. It's increased
Which,
under Trump.
Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I
They
know
should.
Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center. And even
Gotta rake the
Governor Gavin
forests.
Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard
50%
to
plus of
hurricanes,
California's
the
forests are
National
federal
Oceanic
government
Administration
control.
tells us that actually as
Thank
difficult
you.
as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than
Thank
there
you.
were 100 years ago. But many of the climate alarmists
President Pence.
use
We're on Hurricane
hurricanes
Delta,
and wildfires
Gamma.
to try and
Thank
sell
you,
the
Vice
Gamma the
benefits
Delta.
of a Green New Deal. And President Trump and I are going to always put
Thank you,
American
Vice
jobs and
President
American
Pence.
workers first.
Senator Harris.
Over American
as the
lives?
Vice President
Yeah,
mentioned,
you're going to
you
put
co-sponsored the
American
Green New Deal in
businesses over
Congress.
American lives.
But Vice President Biden said in last week's debate that he does not support the Green New Deal. But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. what exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. Joe Biden's economic plan, Moody's, which is a reputable Wall Street firm, has said will create 7 million more jobs than Donald Trump's. And part of those jobs that will be created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is telling us this, you know what Donald Trump said? Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead our country over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy. It's going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate
That's why
agreement
Republicans
with
start with
pride.
an R, and
Senator
Democrats
Harris
start
just
with a
said
D.
that climate
Because
change is an
Democrats drive
existential
forward,
threat.
Republicans go in reverse.
Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
As I said, Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science.
Ah!
Once again, Senator Harris is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes on every American. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that on day one he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of four across America. And with regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website. And as USA
The words Green New Deal are on the campaign website, but if you ask people who are, quote,
AOC when she submitted it in
progressives,
and you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit.
they would say that
America
it's
to
not the
Paris
Green New
Climate
Deal that
Accord.
they want.
Look, the American people have always cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us
Thank
to
you, Vice
retrofit
President.
4 million
Thank you, Vice
American
President.
business buildings. It makes no sense. It will cost jobs. President Trump
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
put
President.
America first. He's going to put jobs first.
America first. There's the racist dog
Care
whistle
of our
again.
Environment and follow the science.
Thank
But,
you, Vice
you know,
President
on the
Pence.
issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the
What
president's
he
trade
thinks
war
is
with
an
China.
accomplishment.
You lost that trade war. You lost it. What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know. I think about 20-year-olds. You know, we have a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old, who are coming out of high school and college right now, and you're wondering, is there going to be a job there for me?
There's some
We're looking at
40-something-year-olds who
people who
also
are
wonder if there's going
trying
to be a
to
job for
figure
them.
out how they're going to pay rent by the end of the month. Almost half of American renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice
Not
President
just
Pence,
the
let me
failure
give
of
just 15
leadership.
seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to our
Well,
next one.
I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we needed a magic wand to bring them back. In our first 3 years after we cut taxes,
you, Vice
rolled back
President
regulation, unleashed American energy, this administration saw 500,000
Thank you, Vice
manufacturing
President
jobs
Pence.
created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as
What
we
is
bring our
their
nation
pay
through
Thank you,
for
Vice
those
this
President.
pandemic.
jobs?
But a
Mr.
Green New
Thank you,
Deal, your
Vice President
massive new
Pence.
mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I'd like
Susan,
to-
I just need to respond very briefly,
15
please.
seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move
Thank you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our
Ding.
next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our,
waiting for me to
our
actually do a spit
fundamental
take.
relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries,
I need to
enemies?
not be taking a
You have
drink
2
while
minutes.
Pence is
Thank you,
starting to
Susan.
talk.
Well, before I leave that,
Oh,
let me speak
jeez.
to
Go. Let me go
voting
back to the
records
last
if I
point I
can.
didn't adequately lie about.
Everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought.
Where
to
was Harris
renegotiate
during
that.
NAFTA?
And the United
What?
States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American
There really should be a
jobs.
chess
The
clock.
American
Just
people deserve to know that. It's
use
probably
up your
why
time. It's done.
Newsweek
You
magazine
can talk as
said
long as you want to
that
do one
Kamala
topic,
Harris was the
but
most
once you
liberal
finish your
member of the
time,
United
you're
States Senate
done.
in 2019. More liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now, with regard to China,
No microphone, just get
Susan,
dropped
first and
off
foremost.
stage.
China is to blame for the coronavirus.
What?
And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear. Made
Well,
it clear
yeah,
at the
he's
end
not
of the day.
happy about the. But
China and the
he's
World Health
also to
Organization did
blame
not
for
play straight with the American
his
people.
reaction to the coronavirus.
They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And
Except there were
the American
waivers
people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel
because
from China.
Trump has already
He
proven
said
he
it
was a racist
hysterical.
with travel
He said it
bans.
Thank you, Vice
xenophobic.
President Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Really? Uninterrupted?
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing.
Yeah, maybe if Trump wouldn't have been so
There's a weird
over the top
obsession that
against
President
China.
Trump has had with
Not that
getting rid
China's
of
great.
whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President.
Absolutely, that is 100% fact.
For example,
No malarkey.
they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got away, they got rid of it.
Not true.
There
That is true.
was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We
excuse
mentioned
me.
before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today
Yep.
because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this.
I
in
love
personal,
relationships. I
professional
have the best
relationships.
relations.
You got to keep your
Just
word to your
ask the
friends.
people I pay.
Got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from
Eric
agreements.
Trump.
You can talk.
Vice
look at the
President
Iran
is a
nuclear deal,
remarkable man.
which
Well
now
done,
has put us
VP.
in a position
He's not even done, and he's
where
already
we are less
burying
safe
himself.
because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys.
Remember
We were
when our
in the
biggest
Iran
problem
nuclear deal with
with the
friends, with
president
allies
was, or
around the
that
country.
we mocked
And
of a
because of
president was that he said
Donald
nuclear.
Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept
Are
his
you
word
going to
when he
repeat
moved
the
American embassy
opinions
to
facts
Jerusalem.
line again? Because that worked so
Capital
well the
of
last
state
two
of Israel.
times.
When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific. And we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of the Middle East the size of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate and took down their leader.
From what I've heard,
without
what I've
one
seen,
American
ISIS is larger than they were
al-Baghdadi
before that.
responsible
They just don't have the
for the
territory.
death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Mueller. It breaks my heart to reflect on it, but the military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look,
President.
we destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear
check
deal.
that.
I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President.
terrorism.
The group is
President
bigger now
Donald
than when it
Trump got us
founded
out of the
self-styled
Thank you, Vice
caliphate.
President.
and when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm
Pence.
to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you,
hesitate
Vice President
to take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give
I'd-
Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length, because of course there are other topics we want to talk
But
about.
I would like equal time.
Yes,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful, and it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way.
It's weird as it. Facts. ISIS
And I know
is
that President Obama feels the same way.
larger than ever.
But you mentioned Soleimani. Let's start there. So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a
There you go.
counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headaches. And this is about a pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who went to Arlington
Instead of bot
Cemetery
retweet my thing, my tweet.
and stood above the graves of our fallen heroes and said, what's in it for them? Because, of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him.
That's
Let's
right.
take what he said about John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says he doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is
Because
this
he
is
does not
very
understand
important
self-sacrifice.
when you want to talk about
He
who is
doesn't
the current
understand doing
commander-in-chief
something that doesn't have
and
monetary
what they
benefit.
care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump
I thought it was
had
a paper
talked at least
towel.
6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank
Joe
you.
Biden would, but Joe Biden
Yeah.
would hold Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I
have to
want to make
respond
sure
to
we
that.
have a chance
I really have to
talk about.
respond to that.
I'm-
Look, she has.
15 seconds, because
Well, I gotta
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep.
that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry,
You can't.
Vice President
Look,
Pence, you've
I-
had more time than
Look,
she's
the-
had
the
so far.
slanders against President Donald Trump
It's not slander.
regarding
It's
men and
true.
women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects but reveres all of those
No,
who
he
serve in
doesn't.
our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
But
Let
thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
There's a
Vice
The
President
American
Pence,
people
you
deserve-
know,
Susan,
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people
I
deserve to
didn't,
know
Vice President
there's a
Pence, I did not,
pattern that you
excuse
can't
me,
deny.
Susan, the
I
American
did not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden
Your
and Trump-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's
I-
debate with the Commission
Shut the
on
mic
Presidential Debates.
off.
I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right ahead.
which is what I'm trying very hard to do.
Go right ahead.
So I want to go ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee. Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority
Yep.
and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions,
Yep.
even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling.
Yep. 5-4.
Access to abortion would then be up to the states.
Depending on what Gorsuch
Vice
or
President Pence, you're the former
Or
governor of Indiana.
Kavanaugh
If
did.
Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time to respond to that very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't
Are you
hesitate.
going to answer this question? You
Qasem
going to say
Soleimani
anything?
is gone.
I mean, the answer
deserve to
from
know
him
that
should
Joe
be
Biden
yes, because that's what he
and Kamala
believes.
Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. It's absolutely essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service members, and that's what you have in President Donald Trump. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic about
Answer
the
the
opportunity to
question
see
about
Judge Amy Coney
abortion.
Barrett become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Now, she's a brilliant woman, and she will
Sorry.
bring a lifetime of experience and a
A
sizable
lifetime.
American
Should
family
be the youngest member of the
Supreme Court
court.
of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you and others, that we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, expressed concern that the dogma of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views and
Thank you.
pro-marriage views.
Thank you, Vice President
So
Pence. Your
my
time
hope
is
is that
up.
when the hearing takes place,
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the
You did
United
not
States.
answer the
Senator
question
Harris,
about
you're
abortion.
the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all, Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would knock anyone for their faith. And in fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as President of the United States. On the issue of this nomination, Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 days before the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. We're literally in an election. Over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting right now. And so Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right to make a decision about her own body. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court.
Hey,
it's the Affordable
Obergefell.
Care Act.
Affordable Care Act, Obergefell v.
Literally,
Hodges.
in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. Donald Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions.
Because the executive
This
order doesn't do
means
crap.
that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public
Thank you,
option or
Senator.
private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
Thank you, Senator.
That's true
Harris.
leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions.
But
But
that
you do have this court
executive
case
order
that you are supporting,
doesn't
your administration supporting, that
do
would
anything
strike
about it.
down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it.
You should.
And this is another one of those cases.
Don't get an
where
abortion
it's
then if you're
really not
pro-life.
Contrast. Joe Biden.
It's very
and Kamala
easy for you
Harris
to not get an
support
abortion if you're
taxpayer funding
pro-life.
of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America.
Because
Now,
when you
for our
defund
part,
Planned
I
Parenthood,
would never
abortions
presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett
increase.
would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris.
They
Are you and
deserve an
Joe
answer
Biden
from
gonna
you.
pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question.
Hypocrisy!
Joe Biden
Oh
has
my
refused to
God,
answer the
such
question.
hypocrisy.
I think the
If you
American
can't
people
win
would
by the
really
rules,
like
change
to know,
them.
if Judge Amy Coney
Lord.
Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In
Here it comes.
1864.
Well, I'd like you to answer the
No,
question.
Mr.
Yes,
Vice President, I'm
please,
speaking.
very
I'm
fast.
speaking. Okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume of you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe
What is that?
said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you,
And the
Senator
American
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about
You
packing.
once
Come
again
on,
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
The
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election.
The
Men and women,
rules
I got to tell you, people across
include
this
the
country
ability to
cherish our
increase
Supreme
the size
Court.
of the
If you
court.
cherish the separation of powers. You need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah,
Thank
let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of
The rules
racial
include
justice.
I just
The
want
ability
the record
to-
reflect she never answered the question.
You
But,
didn't answer a
I
question
think
on
the next
abortion.
debate,
You
Joe
answered
Biden
many
will answer
questions.
Thank
But I think
Thank
the
you.
American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death.
Exactly.
Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so, and I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street, so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently.
Yep.
And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country, of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law.
What is it?
We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and
Someone
cash
said there should be
bail.
shot
And we will
collars for
decriminalize
people who won't stop
marijuana.
speaking.
And
Thank you, Senator Harris.
we will expunge the records of those who have
Thank you,
been
Senator
convicted
Harris.
of marijuana. This is
Thank
a
you,
time
Senator
for
Harris.
leadership on a tragic, tragic issue
Senator Harris,
of
your time is
unarmed
up.
black people in America who have
Thank
been
you, Senator
killed.
Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You
Nope.
have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks
No,
for
it
the loss of
doesn't.
any innocent American life. and the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies.
No, they don't. You're a liar.
But I trust our justice system.
No, you don't. Well,
A
I mean,
grand jury
maybe you
that
do, but
refused
you're
the
not.
evidence.
You're not
And
black.
it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator.
Did they get all the evidence? I think
With
evidence.
regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that
And
followed.
Biden has criticized the
It
rioting
really
and
is
looting.
astonishing.
And a lot of the
Fort Westbrook
rioting
is
and
with us
damage
here
done to
tonight,
property
so
has been
say.
done by white supremacists posing
Just a
as
few weeks ago, I
supporters
stood
of
at
Black
what
Lives
used to
Matter.
be, her salon was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American
Thank you,
neighbors
Vice
and
President.
all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership,
Thank you,
we'll
Vice President.
always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what
always
we
stand with
Vice
law enforcement.
President
Even
Pence,
when
thank
law
you.
enforcement
Time
gets
is
it
up.
wrong, they're going to always stand with law
African-Americans.
enforcement.
Thank you, Vice
record
President
unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and we'll
up.
fight for school choice for all of our minorities.
Thank you, Vice
I'd
President.
like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who has personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. And the
There's a
reality of
fly
this
on
is
his hair.
that we are talking
Yes.
about an election in 2017.
There is a fly
where
on
last
his hair.
week, the
They-
President of the
flies
United
land
States
on
took a
shit.
debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn
Sorry about the
white
curse.
supremacists.
Not true.
And
Not true.
it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by.
That's right.
And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals.
Some of whom are good
He
people.
instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He, on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. And America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together
Senator Harris.
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have
thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media so much in this country, Susan, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did.
Some of
comments
whom
that
are good.
President Trump and I
This
and
selective
others
edited is
on
not
our
going to
side
make
of
you
it.
look better when you give the full
Senator Harris
context.
conveniently omitted, after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments, he condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren.
That
His
doesn't
daughter and
matter.
son-in-law are Jewish.
You
This
can
is a
have
president
Jewish
who
grandchildren and still be a
respects and cherishes
racist, be a
all
bigot,
of
be an
the American
anti-Semite.
people. But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney
Thank you.
General of California,
Thank you,
you
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank you.
blacks in California.
Can
You
we
did
not say
nothing on
blacks?
criminal justice reform
It's
in California.
2020.
You didn't lift a finger to
Black
pass the
people.
first
Black
step
is an
back on Capitol
adjective,
Hill.
not a
The
noun.
reality is, your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself.
President
President
Pence.
Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President
We fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you,
minorities.
sir.
And we'll do it for 4 more
Thank you.
years.
You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holes.
Thank you.
Not only,
Thank you, Senator
I would
Harris.
like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes, I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice
Somebody
President
has sneezing in the
on
audience.
our record
Coronavirus.
of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power,
That sneezing
what
is
steps
hilarious.
would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote. Please
Yep.
vote. Vote
Vote.
early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our voice
Don't boo.
and we use our
Vote.
voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote. Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice
Amen.
President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself
If you
to a
have
peaceful transfer
the
of
winning
power after the election.
plan,
If Vice
you
President
should not
Biden is
need
declared
to
the
have
winner
to
and President Trump
disqualify votes
refuses
for
to accept
voters
a
that are
peaceful
legally
transfer of
cast
power,
or legally
what would be
showing up
your
to the
role
polls.
and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every
movement.
confidence that those same
Trump has
Americans
launched a
that delivered
movement,
that
yes.
historic victory
It's a
in
bowel movement
2016.
that flies like the
We
land.
see this president's record, where we rebuild our military. We revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. When you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, we've all seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years.
Put the country through.
Until it was found that there was
What
no
Trump has
obstruction,
put the
no
country
collusion,
through.
case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the
They
United
did
States
impeach the president of the United
over
States.
a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. So let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump
You're
and I are fighting
delusional.
every
You're a
day in
loony.
courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud.
That's not true.
We have a free and fair
In
election.
many
but
ways.
We know we're going to have confidence in it, and I believe in all my heart that President Donald Trump's going to be reelected for 4 more years.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to read a question that someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you. And I want to close tonight's debate with the question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added,
This is the
"Your
perfect
examples
question
would
for
make all
the
difference
Biden-Harris
to bring us
campaign."
together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Oof, Kamal's
Brecklin,
going
it's
to
a
own
wonderful
this last
question.
question.
And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late
Don't
Justice
say her
Antonin
name.
Scalia.
Get her name out
They
your
were
mouth.
on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States. One very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the 2 of them and their
It's not
families
since her passing. It's been
were the very
known.
closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris
But
and
you
I have
don't.
on this stage tonight.
And y'all are responsible
But
for that
when the
vitriol.
debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you.
in times
We're not
of
coming
need,
together.
especially
Your
where, in
presidency,
fact,
your administration has made Americans
difficult
less
position.
likely to come together, especially
Senator
on
Harris,
COVID.
what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all aspire to be. And that, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future,
Biden has empathy,
I do
Trump
believe
doesn't.
the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much
That
for
was a
being with us tonight.
masterful
We want to thank also the University of Utah for its
answer for
hospitality.
that one, because
and
clearly
most of all, our
Biden does have a
thanks to
history
all
of
the
working reaching
Americans
across the
who
aisle
watched this debate
and
tonight. Again, our best
working
wishes
with
for a
other
quick
people.
recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on
Next
October
Thursday.
15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us then. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, well, that is the end of the vice presidential debate. Much less vitriol, much less childishness than what happened in the debate previous. So I do think that there was some interruptions, I guess, on both sides. Harris did it as well, and didn't look good when she did it. Didn't look good when he did it. I think he did it more, and we will be discussing that and more on the podcast, which starts in about 25 minutes or so. I'm happy that there's a break between this and the podcast, so I can go fill my water up and everything, and maybe get a small snack or something. Anyway, but for all those who are watching, we've had 3 concurrent viewers. We've had 10 overall viewers so far. I did gain some subscribers today, which is great, so I hope you watched. I hope you enjoyed this. See the little bit of fact-checking that I was able to do during the course of the debate while allowing everybody to listen to most of what everybody says. So, again, thank you all so much for watching. Please, again, tune in 25 minutes from now. I'll be starting on the podcast, and we'll be talking about this and other issues. You can join the chat room there. Go to blogtalkradio.com/liberaldan. You can sign up for a free account, and if you have a free account, you can then join us in the chat room, and you'd be able to leave questions and comments on the issues as well, and participate in the debate that's going on. You can also call in. There's a phone number as well, and I welcome calls from left, right, center, anywhere you are on the political spectrum. You're more than welcome. I have an open invitation for anybody who is voting for Trump to call in and tell me why and explain it to me, because I don't get it. I don't understand, except for the fact that you just, there's one particular reason, and I don't know. Do we have that many races in this country? I don't know. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Patreon.com/liberaldan if you'd like to support the channel, the podcast, the mini-cast, the other things that I'm trying to do. If you go to liberaldan.com, there's lots of different links on where you can go to support the show and follow me on different social media. But again, as always, make sure to stay safe, mask up, stay socially distanced, and